My name is Jamie Kobat. I'm from Lebanon, Oregon. I am a mother of 4, remarried to my now husband who has 6 children, so we have 10, and we have 21 grandchildren. I'm here because I wanted to tell my story. There's been a lot of need to let people know of the fraud going on and how our government is going after people that are innocent, and it's because basically we have no way to fight. We have no ability to come up with all the thousands of dollars for attorneys. And anyways, to my story. I have a son that is now 20, and when he was 5, he was diagnosed with autism. And I was married at the time to his father, and his father and I did not get along at all. So we went through a divorce, and shortly after that I was awarded my son's disability through SSI, which, by the way, that application was filled out with myself and my ex-husband.
So you agreed?
Yes. So later I was given sole custody, and it ended up being 15 years battling custody in Linn County.
Why were you given sole custody? Was it negligence on your former husband's part?
It was negligence and just showing that he had no interest. The judge seen that he had no interest and that he was taking no part in doctor's visits, school, and none of that. No parent, wasn't picking him up for parenting. He just was.
And you literally had a court decision granting you the sole custody from this particular judge or the Department of Human Services or whatever at that time.
Yes,
okay.
The judge awarded me sole custody, but that was repeated. We went to court many, many more times because he would take my son against a court order. He would steal him.
After he was made to pay child support.
Yes, child support was another big thing. He didn't want to come after any part of the parenting or even be involved until his child support went up in 2009. And that's when the court battles really got bad. And he would turn me into just frivolously to different, entities. He would call the schools and say I was doing certain things as parenting. He would call DHS, he would call the courthouse, or he would call the police, or he would call just SSI and just make things up just to create issues.
Yeah.
So during this period of time of custody battles, he would make false statements, and I would have to always go through a process, cleaning it up, trying to prove my innocence, trying to prove that wasn't correct, or that's not correct, or this isn't correct. And so during this time, I had my son, and he would steal him, take him to his house, or steal him and take him to a hotel and hide him, take him to his sister-in-law's house and hide him, break into my house at 2 o'clock in the morning, taking him, running me over with a car. He never had to account to or be accountable for any of it.
The authorities did not take it on as like a abduction or anything like that?
They said the last time he stole him in 2011, he took him from me out of my house at 2 in the morning. I was asleep, and that's when he stole him. And I called the sheriff's department in Bend, and they tried to stop him. They called him, said, "Meet me at Bed and Bath." I always say things backwards, sorry. And he said, okay. And then apparently they got there, the sheriff's department, and there was a letter in a shopping cart from him. And it said he didn't trust them. He works for Linn County Sheriff's Department, so he's not going to stop.
Your former husband works for Linn County?
Yes, he works on their vehicles and has become friends with several of them.
Oh.
So basically they didn't go search for my son, and I had to go to court to fight for him, which I did. And I always won sole custody, no matter what the situation was.
Got him back.
And in 2014, well, let me back up. In 2012, we had to move from our previous address that we were at because I had a landlord that just wasn't honest and the house was in foreclosure. So during that time, I went to Tim's house, my now husband, and stayed at his house. During that time, Tim started going to school in 2013, and in Bend. So I was basically at the house, and he was gone, and my son was back and forth with his dad and me, just really not stable, if you will.
About how old was your son at this time? I mean, when he was conflicted?
Well,
like
between
this?
2012 and 2014, I was charged. And those are the years that his dad kept him a little bit here more, or just didn't bring him back one day here. And it was the worst time, actually. But he still was with me 50% of the time. But just really...
He must have been in his, what, mid-teens by...
I think he was 14.
So he was very susceptible to, being torn.
Well, he had a counselor that said he was being brainwashed and that there was some parent alienation going on from his father's side, and that it had been going on, and that I don't know if anybody understands that. It just basically means that a child from one parent can be brainwashed, that they convince that child not to believe in the other parent, not to trust them, not to like any of their family members. And it's very, very in detail. I mean, and then you got a child that's autistic and, compulsive obsessive, and you take all that together and it makes it very hard. And he just wants his dad to just love him and unconditionally love him and accept him.
Did if you don't mind me asking, did your son have to have special schooling, or was he in public school, or was he required to be in?
He was in public school.
Was there a lot of additional
Yes.
care that was need to be facilitated in order to help with his situation
Would
cost money and would be a further burden upon, not a burden, but be further expenses accrued by yourself, and obviously your ex-husband was trying to take money, not help with it.
Well, he was in an IEP, which means that they have to help him with certain things, and he struggled with getting dressed. He was very compulsive obsessive, so he just didn't like clothes, and he was having horrible anxiety about being in school. So they had to do certain things, have somebody that he could go to if he was having a bad day, or maybe he had to go sit in one room with one person instead of a whole group. They would set it so that he only went to school at a certain time if he was having a tough time. So yeah, there was a lot, and a lot of doctor's appointments, a lot of counseling appointments, and medication. Yeah, there was.
But you still kind of feel that this entire situation was more so due to the fact that your ex-husband didn't want to pay this extra child support, was trying to get out of that, and that
Yes.
was basically the main reason behind taking him, and it just,
Yeah, it is, and it is all of that. And he did remarry, and the woman he remarried absolutely did not like me, and she instigated a lot of this. He's now divorced.
He didn't show any interest in the child until he was required to pay child support.
Right. That's what I was trying to establish, that it was
Yes,
indeed
he did not.
Basically the reasoning behind him even pursuing your son is the fact that he isn't responsible for child support legally.
That's on the record in Albany by a judge saying just that.
Okay, good.
Yes,
good. Okay.
it is. It was in a child support
We'll
order.
definitely include that. Okay.
So as time goes on and we're fighting this battle to, just keep him stable in my home, and his dad's just tearing him out all the time, and I never know what's going to happen, but I'm over in Bend with Redmond with Tim. He's over there going to school, and I went over to visit him and had been there for a couple of days, and I get a knock on the door, and it's SSI investigator, and then I have a welfare worker there, and they're telling me that me receiving funds from my child is illegal and that it's fraudulent.
She kept saying, I have custody.
I have
said,
sole
"No,
custody.
you don't."
They were basing it on saying that she did. They claimed
Well,
you
I
didn't
found
have
out my
custody.
ex-husband wrote a letter to them,
Uh-huh.
and then they went to my ex-husband's house and interviewed my child without any parent there that had any kind of, legal custody, guardianship. I wasn't there, and his dad wasn't there. The stepmom was, and she allowed the guy to interview my son. And he said he felt very intimidated because he's always afraid of his dad. He doesn't want to disappoint his dad. He can sit and talk bad about me all day and say lies, and I understand it. It's not that he's choosing to. I understand that he's choosing.
No, it would be any child, regardless of their mental state or whatever else, would feel the same way. That's natural with a divorce, especially when the two parents
That's right.
are not,
He felt very
congenial.
inferior of the fact that he had to make a decision
Oh, it's sad.
to choose that side versus trying to make the right decision and say the truth. He's done this all of his life. He's had to battle it.
Did the social worker not have any kind of impetus as far as what they were required to have present when they went and did this, or
They didn't care.
They
didn't
just
care.
basically said I was
We asked them
fraudulent, and that they kept telling me I didn't have sole custody.
We